Okay, in this lesson we're going to be continuing our learning about the keyboard. If you have not done this part with us, you should go back and do that lesson first. But if you have, we're going to keep going right where we stopped last time, okay? All right, so the next one on here is called a natural half step. So I told you that we were going to come back and talk about E to F and B to C. They're special because they don't have a black key in between them. These are white keys that are actually touching each other the whole way up. There is no note, no sound in between these keys on a keyboard, okay? So a B is just right next to a C. It's a half step. It's as close as you can get. And that's true it just naturally happens. You don't have to go to a sharp or a flat to make it happen. It just naturally falls that way on the piano, and E to F as well. So your natural half steps, this is a super easy definition, your natural half steps are B to C and E to F. That's it. That is your definition, B to C and E to F. Now, you can memorize that, and that's fine, but honestly, if you know to find your C and you understand how the notes fall on a keyboard, you can also just, figure out, you look at it, you go, okay, here's my C, so B to C is one of them, C to E, F, E to F is the next one. So if you understand what you're doing, this is also much easier than just trying to memorize it and not understanding it. So B to C and E to F, find them on the keyboard. It's the ones that touch all the way up and down with no black key in between. Okay, the next one, and I gave you the definition, but I didn't tell you what it was when I said it last time. Enharmonic. You should practice saying that word. Enharmonic. Enharmonic. Okay, it's a fancy word. It means two names for the same note. So, knowing that, look up here, and you're going to see that those are actually enharmonics. They are two names for the same note. Let's start with this one, since this is the one we've kind of been talking about the most. We said that this note right here, this black key, is going to be called F sharp because it's a half step above F. It's also going to be called G flat because it's a half step below G. So it has two names depending on which way you're coming from, F sharp or G flat. So I think of that kind of like if you think about like a parent or a grandparent, you might call your mom, but her mom wouldn't call her mom would call her by her first name. And somebody that works with her might call her Mrs. Smith or something like that, right? So different people, depending on the situation and how people know them, might call them a different name. That's kind of how this works. So this note has two different names, and depending on the situation in music, it might be called F sharp or it might be called G flat. You need to know both names. You don't want to look at this and only think of it as G flat. You want to be able to understand that it's both, and that's going to be true with your music as well, okay? All right, speaking of that, one of the times where it's really important for you to understand enharmonics is the chromatic scale, okay? The chromatic scale is a scale progressing by half steps. A scale progressing by half steps. So a chromatic scale is a scale built with only half steps, okay? So if many of you probably have done this with a keyboard. If you see a keyboard, one of the first things people tend to do is they go and they play every note on the keyboard going up like this. Right? So if you've ever done that, you've actually played a chromatic scale, or you start at the top and you go down like this. That's a chromatic scale because you're playing every single half step on the keyboard. You're playing every note, you're not skipping any, so you're playing all the little tiny intervals on a keyboard. Okay, so a scale progressing by half steps is a chromatic scale. C-H-R-O-M-A-T-I-C, chromatic. Now, the reason I said it's important to understand your enharmonics is when you learn a chromatic scale, you need to know that this note, however you finger it on your instrument, is a C sharp or a D flat. Because sometimes in music it's going to be written as a C sharp, and sometimes it's going to be written as a D flat, and it's important that you understand the fingering no matter which way it's written. It's going to be the same fingering or the same key, but it's important that you know that both names, because it might be written either way. Before we go on, there's one more thing that I want to do. I forgot to do it back here. So we're going to come back to natural half step. The definition's super easy, B to C and E to F, but I do want you to mark it on your keyboard, and I forgot to mention this, so before we go on, I want to make sure we get it. All right, so right here, E to F is a natural half step. So you can mark a line like this, and then try to write real small, natural half step, okay? Now, on here, you can see, depends how small you can write and how neatly you can write, a natural half step with an arrow. That's a possibility too, okay? All right, and then the other one is B to C, and then you're gonna do it again here for E to F. So mark those three. Those are your natural half steps. You can pause if you need more time. Natural half step. Okay, now let's talk about how that affects our half steps. So, or I'm sorry, our sharps and flats, okay? So here we have a half step. So you're gonna look and you're gonna say, okay, well, E, if I go up a half step from E, I'm on F, right? There's no black key in between. A half step above E is F. By definition, a half step above E is F. And a half step above E is also gonna be a sharp. So that means that this note right here is also E sharp. That's its second name. That's its enharmonic name, E sharp, okay? Now, think about what this would be for a second. You're gonna start on F, you're gonna go down a half step, so it's gonna be a flat, it's gonna be F flat. Okay, F flat. So it is possible for these white keys to have a sharp or a flat name depending on the situation when you have natural half steps. And that's going to be really important when we get over here and start talking about this in the next lesson. Okay, so E sharp is the same white key that we also call F. And F flat is the same white key that we also call E. So those natural half steps kind of change up the pattern. These are all like one pattern, and these are one pattern. But the E and the F and the B to C are different. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try to figure out what would be the other name for this note, the enharmonic, and what would be the other name or the enharmonic of that note. And come back and see if you get it right. So a half step above B, so the enharmonic of C is B sharp, and a half step below C, is going to be C flat, okay? All right, now, this kind of like the natural half steps. You can memorize this, but it's honestly more work to memorize, like B sharp is the enharmonic of C at first, than to just understand it. So the reason that we're doing this on the keyboard is so you can see it and learn it. Now eventually, once you learn it and you understand it, it's going to make sense on your instrument, because when you play a chromatic scale, you're going to notice that you're going to play G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, and at some point your brain might be like, wait a minute, why isn't there a B sharp? Well, there is, but it's the enharmonic of C, so there's not an extra note there, if that makes sense, okay? So for now, understanding this is going to come in handy later. You can also just memorize it, that the enharmonic of F is E sharp and the enharmonic of E is F flat, but you really want to understand the natural half steps. That's one of the key things to being able to do the next lesson, okay? All right, so quick review of this, natural half steps, B to C and E to F. You got to watch out there with those natural half steps as far as the enharmonics are going to be slightly different. So E, the enharmonic of E is F flat, because F lowered a note. E sharp is the enharmonic of F. C flat is the enharmonic of B. B sharp is the enharmonic of C. Enharmonic is two names for the same note. Two names for the same note is enharmonic. And a chromatic scale is a scale progressing by half steps. A scale going up and down by half steps, playing every note on the keyboard. The link to the next lesson in this video series can be found in the description below.